All right, what's up, camera nerds? I got the red KOMODO X behind me, and in this video I just want to walk through some of the anamorphic settings that I use with the more common anamorphic D-squeezes, 1.5 times, 1.33, and 2 times anamorphic. And I decided to do this out in the park to kind of show you how the width and the aspect ratios and all that change with the different squeeze factors of the different lenses. And I'm going to show you just some things and some tips on which settings to use and how I use some of the different settings for different scenarios. This might be a pretty boring video, but hopefully this is more informational than entertaining. So if that interests you, let's hang out and chill, and we'll start off with 1.33 times anamorphic. All right, first up we have the Laowa 1.33 times anamorphic adapter in front of a 50mm prime. Right now I'm at 6K 17:9 on the red KOMODO X, and that means I have no de-squeezing going on in camera. So the first thing you can do is change the squeeze factor in camera. So right now 17:9, and then you have all these different ones. When you start seeing an X next to a number, that's when you know you have an anamorphic mode. So 2X is too much for this. So we're gonna go over until we find 1.3. The further you go down the line, you'll find your squeeze factors. So here's 1.3x right here. This is essentially de-squeezing the image for you in camera, which is really nice. It makes things a lot easier when you are doing it. As you can see here, I've got some frame guides right here. And typically what I like to do is either have a 16:9 or 2:1 aspect ratio on my monitor, just in case I want to master a project in 2:1 for maybe YouTube or something. At least I know those frame guides are there. I have 240 aspect markers as well, which is really helpful because you'll actually get a wider field of view than 240 with different anamorphic lenses on the KOMODO X, depending on which setting that you're in. So this is de-squeezed in camera. This is really awesome. And quick tip, when you're using an anamorphic adapter, you want to set your lens to infinity, and then you actually focus on the barrel of the anamorphic adapter. I like this Laowa one because it has the gears on it already, and which is really nice, and it has a silver flare, so you get that nice neutral flare that I really like. All right, next up we have the 50mm Laowa Nanomorph. It's a 1.5 times anamorphic lens. So what we're going to do is easy enough. Is there is a 1.5 times squeeze factor on the KOMODO, so you just switch over and you have that here. Now the reason why I'm out here doing these landscapes is just to kind of show you how the squeeze factor really influences the width of the frame. So with the 1.5x, you can see you're getting a little bit more on the edges. And then what I have here is I've got my 2:1 aspect ratio, which is kind of grayed out on the sides here, and that's just helpful for me. So if I want to do a 2:1 deliverable, I have that as well. It's kind of hard to see on the monitor in this bright daylight, but just right here you can see I have my 240 aspect ratio marker. And what's basically going on is with this 1.5 times squeeze on this 16:9 sensor area, that's actually giving me closer to, I think it's a 2.66:1 aspect ratio as opposed to a 240. So you're going to have a little bit more room on the sides of the frame to move in post, but when you crop in, you're losing some of that information on either side. So that's something to know, just so when you go into post, you will have to punch in a little bit to get to that 240 aspect ratio. All right, now I've put the 1.33 times adapter in front of the 1.5 times anamorphic lens, which effectively gives you a 2 times anamorphic squeeze. Now, right now we are in the 16:9 1.5x setting, and that's not the setting we want to be in because we're on a 2 times anamorphic lens. So what we want to do is we want to hop over to one of the 2 times modes. The first one we'll hop over to is the 6K 4:3 2x mode. This is going to give you the same cropping ratio as you would have on the 16:9 1.5x setting. So this is really handy to know if you are mixing different squeeze factor lenses for whatever reason. Maybe you are shooting on the Atlas Mercuries to have a smaller camera package for a gimbal, or maybe you're using the Laowa Nanomorphs for a gimbal or super small footprint, whatever the case is. Those are 1.5 times X lenses. However, if the rest of your project is shot on 2x anamorphic lenses, you want to shoot in this 4x3 2x mode, or at least I would, so that when I get into post, it's going to be the same cropping ratio. It's going to be the same 2.66 to 1 cropping ratio as the 1.5 times setting on the Red Komodo X. It just makes it simpler in post for me. That's what I did. I shot a project on the Laowa Proteus mainly, and then used the 27mm nanomorph for some wide angle shots. And so I just shot everything in 4x3 2x on the Proteus lenses just to make my life a little bit easier in post. This also gives you a little bit of information on the sides if you want to be able to move things over in post a little bit for reframing. That's kind of nice if you are in a 240 timeline, that's nice. But if you don't want to do that and you just want to drop the footage on and have a 240 aspect ratio, then you want to hop over to the 6K 6x5 setting right here. And as you can see, well, you probably can't see, but this is no longer, you no longer see my frame guides for the 240 because this will be in a 240 native aspect ratio. This makes it really handy if your timeline is 240. You can just pretty much drop it on and be off to the races. When you compare it, you can see you have a little bit more width on the 4x3, but if you punch it in, you're gonna have basically the same image. Sometimes using the 4:3 setting is nice because you have a little bit of wiggle room to reframe in post from left to right. Now, another setting I want to show you is the 6K 1:1 2x. So if you have a 2x anamorphic lens, if you plan on only delivering in a 2:1 format, then this might be an option for you. I personally don't see a real need to do that. All you're doing is, it's just like the 6x5 setting. It's just kind of cropping out the sides, the width. This is what it's doing with 1:1. It's just giving you a 1:1 box, and I don't really see a real reason to do this. I would prefer to have the information on the sides for reframing, but if you are maybe doing a live stream or something in 2:1 aspect, or your final deliverable is 2:1 and you don't care about the stuff on the side, this might be an option for you to just go ahead and record 1:1 2x anamorphic, and that gives you a 2:1 aspect ratio. So essentially what the camera is doing in these anamorphic modes is it's kind of writing metadata to the camera. So when you get into post-production, when you drop it into your NLE, like DaVinci Resolve, for example, if you go to clip attributes, it already assigns it to either 2x or 1.5x or whatever the setting was in camera, so that you don't have to de-squeeze it in post. However, there may be times where you don't want to do that. And one reason is if you are recording in multiple resolutions on the Komodo X, for example, or the Komodo, there aren't anamorphic modes for the different resolutions in camera. So what you can do instead is just de-squeeze it on your monitor. So this is the DSM-C3 monitor. It's made by Small HD, but Small HD monitors do this. Some other monitors do it as well. And you just de-squeeze it in camera. So I have this tool right here to do monitor de-squeeze, and I have this set to a 2x mode right here. Now this is crazy wide. This is like 3.78 to 1 or something. So super wide. You're gonna obviously crop that in post. But the benefit here is if you wanted to record in multiple resolutions, being able to just de-squeeze it in the monitor, bring it into post, and you can change the clip attributes for all those clips to be 1.5 or 2x or whatever your lens is. And that kind of makes it a little bit easier in post, so you can just assign that same aspect ratio to all of your clips and not have to be like, oh, I shot this in 6.5 2x, but this is 5K 17:9 or whatever. So I have that same aspect ratio, 17:9 with a 2x anamorphic. It's still the same aspect ratio, but now I'm in 5K, so I could go up to 96 frames per second. And then same thing with 4K resolution. I still have that same 3.78 or 3.77 to 1 aspect ratio. And again, this is just helpful if you plan on recording in multiple resolutions on your Red camera. This is going to basically give you the same workflow and process with cropping and all that when you drop it into your NLE. All right, well, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you found that helpful or useful. I know it was super boring. Thank you for watching. If you are still here, let me know if it helped you in the comments. If it didn't help you, you're probably honestly not here anyway. So I hope you stuck around for a little bit at least. But yeah, definitely a boring topic, but I just wanted to kind of talk through some of the settings that I frequently use and some of the reasons why I would use different settings for different purposes. And I think probably the most, not the most useful, but probably the one that I don't see recommended a lot is not using any anamorphic mode on the camera and just using de-squeezing in camera. And this methodology is really useful for, especially for OG Komodo owners, where you're limited to 40 frames per second in 6K resolution. Maybe you want to have 48 frames per second. The only way to get that is dropping down to 5K resolution. So to have a consistent workflow in post, I would recommend not even using anamorphic modes and just using the full width of the sensor and having some frame guides for you so that you can drop it into post and just know what your cropping ratios are. And this also applies to, like, if you're shooting on like the FX3, for example, or a camera that maybe will de-squeeze it in the monitor but not actually de-squeeze it in the metadata. This would kind of apply to that as well. You would have to de-squeeze it in post as well. So yeah, this is super boring. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.